Hello, everyone. I think it's time. As you all know, we usually start our talks and all of our classes 10 after, so I'm going to follow that convention here. So today I'm very pleased to introduce the speaker for our colloquium talk today, um, Professor Kyung Deok Roh from Gwangju Institute for Science and Technology. And he's traveled far to actually come and give us a talk on the Yalta Conference in the division of the Korean Peninsula today. Dr. Roh has many accomplishments. He's won many awards, including the National Research Foundation of Korean Postdoctoral Fellowship recently, and also the Mellon Fitzpatrick Dissertation Writer Fellowship a few years before that. His dissertation, which he completed at the University of Chicago, was on Stalin's think tank, the Varga Institute, and the making of the Stalinist idea of world economy and politics. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Dr. Roh is a specialist of the Stalin era. All right. So just a few notes in the publications. Dr. Roh has a recent journal article, Rethinking the Varga Controversy, 1941 to 1953, which was published a few years ago in Europe-Asia Studies. And also he has a forthcoming monograph titled Stalin's Economic Advisors, the Varga Institute, and the Making of Soviet Foreign Policy, 1927 to 1953. So I'll leave the introduction at that because I'm sure all of you are very eager to listen to the talk. Now, before we do, let me make a few very, very quick announcements. On the 24th of February, we're going to have another colloquium talk by Dredge Byung-Chu Kang. And the title of that talk is Idols of Development, the Performance of Asian Modernity via Queer Thai K-pop Fandom. And I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting talk. The very next day, on the 25th of February, we actually have a very important event for the Nam Center for Korean Studies, and that is the Sang Nam Memorial Lecture. This year, the memorial lecture will be delivered by His Excellency, the ambassador from the Republic of Korea to the United States, Ho Young-an, who I'm sure will provide us with an incredibly enriching talk about U.S. and Korea diplomacy. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest.
Thank you. It is quite an honor to give a lecture here at Nam Center, which I think one of the most active Korean institutes in North America. Today the topic today I'm gonna talk about is about Yalta Conference, which is one of the most controversial international conferences in the era of modern diplomacy, and its impact on the division of Korean Peninsula, which is also the key question in Korean history, especially 20th century Korean history. Before I get started, let me just give you a brief the roadmap of today's lecture. In introduction, I will mostly discuss about the previous studies on Yalta Conference and their limitations. And the second part, which is called Before Yalta, I'm gonna talk about the big three, which is America, Great Britain, and Soviet Union. So wartime goals and obstacles to them. And third part will be devoted how those kind of goals and obstacles were compromised or settled at the conference. And finally, I will get to the Yalta and the Korean questions. Okay. This is one of the most famous pictures in this history of the 20th century. Winston Churchill is here, and in the middle, FDR, and Stalin is on the right. This picture was taken on the final day of the conference, which was on February 11th in 1945. I think the picture itself says a lot. These are the victors of the Second World War. And they jointly get together and declare the post-war vision. Post-war world vision. And where the creation of the United Nations and division of Germany and etc. were professed. As many scholars believe, this occasion, the Yalta Conference, was so crucial, especially in the later part of the 20th century. So there are numerous articles and monographs and academic works about the conference. But for the convenience, I would like to categorize them into two major schools. The first one is negative school. Negative school means people who see the conference's negative impact on the world, post-war world. They think the Yalta Conference is all about dividing the world by great powers. Those superpowers determine the destiny of weaker nations and put them in the so-called sphere of influence. So after Yalta Conference, the weaker nation like Poland or Korea doesn't control their own destiny. Their destiny was mostly determined by those kind of big, great powers. And as the conference was to divide the world by great powers, it also means the beginning of the Cold War. The Cold War means actually division of the world in the ideological terms. On the other hand, there's a group of scholars who I call the positive school, which a group of scholars see that the positive impact of positive aspect of Yalta Conference. They say the conference means the end of the old imperialist era, and conference was to establish a new moral world. New moral world, where the big country like United States, Great Britain, and Soviet Union played a policing role or a peacemaking role and the big three never imagined the Cold War according to this school, and rather the betrayal of the Yalta later made by either Truman or Stalin was the one responsible to Cold War. If we apply those interpretations to Korean question, it goes like this. The negative school says Yalta is the one responsible for the division of the Korean Peninsula, because the negative school says the Yalta was the one that caused the Cold War. Positive school says Yalta sought one independent Korea, which at the same time would be governed under trusteeship of great power for the time being. In current Korean academic circle, the negative view is dominant view. So let me give you some video clip of Korean talk show, which was on air last month. This show is called Soljan. Just listen to this.
가만 안 있으면 지들이 어떻게 할 건데?
가만 안 있죠. 왜냐하면
지들이 이 대한민국을 삼파선을 끊어놓은 사람 아니에요. 이게 프랭클린 루스벨트가 얄타 컨퍼런스에서 스탈린에게 속아가지고 삼파선 끊어놓은 사람들 아니야?
Yeah, actually, if you understand Korean, it would be very a funny moment. But basically, what he basically said was that the Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, was deceived by Stalin to divide the Korean Peninsula at the Yalta Conference. That's what he said, basically. So this is very popular view. This negative view is very popular in Korean society right now. But I think both approaches, while they are presenting opposing views, but share same limitation, which is they tend to see Yalta Conference only in light of Cold War origins. that means they sometimes overlook the fact that Yalta was a part of wartime diplomacy. So my approach is like, I am stressing that the Yalta Conference was not just post-war plan, but also culmination in wartime diplomacy. So if you get a better understanding of the Yalta Conference, we need to have a better understanding of what the victories, wartime goals, and obstacles to them. So in doing so, I think I can give you like a new explanation about the Yalta Conference and its impact on the Korean Peninsula. Okay. So the next part is will be devoted about this one, what victories, wartime goals, and obstacles to them. Let's start with Britain, Great Britain first. What was the Britain's key goals? I mean wartime goals. As know well, the Great Britain is one of the the leading country in 19th century's old imperialist politics. So at that time, around the time the Yalta Conference was held, the Great Britain still have a lot of interest and concessions in his colonies and former colonies all over the world. So the core of their interest resided in Middle East and India. And to secure those interests, they need Mediterranean Sea as their own sea. And to do that, they need Italy and Southern Balkan Peninsula. Not just imperialist politics, but at least British-friendly regime in Italy and Southern Balkan Peninsula. So you may get a better sense when you look at this kind of picture, the map, I should say. The red part is like a British colony and former colonies, and this area is the key core of British colonial interested. So you're not gonna, you might not wanna go around like this. So you just wanna get a shortcut like this one, like this. So you need if you've written Great Britain, you need the Mediterranean Sea, and Italy and Balkan Peninsula is the key. Actually, the Greece is the key. So their wartime goal is to secure the Britain-friendly regime in Italy and the Greece. But there are obstacles to attain those goals. The first obstacle is FDR's America. FDR's America saw such British plan as old imperialist move and openly opposed to them. And FDR has own idea about post-war, which was very different from the English idea. English plan. So that is first obstacle to England. And second obstacle is Soviet Union. Soviet Union was at that time greatest military power in European continent. They just defeated Nazi Germany, almost defeated Nazi Germany. And there were strong possibilities to advance their troops, Italy and Southern Balkans, because they are strongest military power. And even more disturbing for Great Britain, communism was very popular in Europe, especially Italy and Greece. Because not because they loved communism, communists at the time, but because communists are mostly not related to Nazi collaborators. So because that's the reason the communism was very popular at that time. Those are main obstacles to Britain. But anyway, Great Britain was on the move to secure Italy and Greece. In 1943, Great Britain liberated Italy from Mussolini. In 1944, British troops entered Athens in Greece. In doing so, Great Britain was making one of the most important political practices influencing post-war world, which was principle of politics of occupation. Politics of occupation is really the key concept of this today my lecture today. So I need to explain more about the politics of occupation. So what is politics of occupation? Politics of occupation means exclusive occupation of a country or region by one occupation force. And it is to establish a single regime sponsored by that occupation force. In doing so, that occupation force repressed other political oppositions. Those kind of practice might sound natural to us, but it is totally different from that. Totally different from what FDR was thinking about at that time. So this plan is quite opposite to FDR's plan. But what was FDR's plan? That was, later we are getting to that point. Right now, we talk about the Great Britain a little bit more. So before Yalta, this guy, Badoglio and Plastiras, this one, General Badoglio was installed by British troops as the leader of Italian government. And this guy, and same was true for this guy in Greece. He is the General Ronald Scobie, British commander of occupational force in Greece. And what he basically did was to repress other political opposition. Those were generally unarmed protesters. Most of them, not most of them, many of them has a socialist background, but their political opposition, they were repressed by British force. Basically, at that time, the Great Britain is following the politics of occupation. So politics of occupation is the different FDR's post-war vision. Before we talk about the FDR's post-war vision, let me get to the Soviet Union first. The Soviet Union had unprecedented war damage during the Second World War. Because they are virtual sole fighter against Nazis on European continent. So during the 4-year wartime span, they lost 27 million population. It's unreal number, including 15 million civilians. So many people. That's in the 4-year time span. Many of you already know that how many Americans died during the Second World War because of war-related issue, which was 400,000. 400,000 is still great, huge number, but when you compare this one, that is beyond comparison, I think. Okay, so one American scholar who working on the Soviet Second World War, David Stone at University of Kansas, said 1,000 Soviets died every hour of every day of every month of every year from June 1941 to May 1945. So they had a tremendous amount of population losses. The key reason of the unreal number of the deaths was that the so-called Holocaust was committed by Nazis within the boundary of Soviet Union. That's the reason they have so many civilian deaths during the Second World War. Actually, I don't have much time to talk about this one, so let me skip, because it's not directly related to today's issue. So, So in this situation, Soviet Union was kind of obsessed with the security. So their key goals, their wartime goals, is no more war in near future, and demilitarize potential enemies like Germany, and secure buffer zones on their borderlines. They think it's the best way to minimize war damage if another war breaks out in the near future. So this is the key reason why they are so obsessed with Eastern Europe and some part of Northern China too. To attain those goals, they need cooperative relations with the other big two, the US and the UK. So they are willing to make some compromises to maintain the good relationship with the United States and the United Kingdom. So they do not plan to maximize their military power on European continent. And also, they did not plan to incite communist movement there, which were very popular, as I told you before. This is because Stalin thought that the Soviet Union needed Eastern Europe more accurately than other regions. They did not want to stimulate the United States or the Great Britain, whose interests reside in Western and Southern Europe. So they have two options to attain those goals. The first option was provided by Britain. The Britain's politics of occupation, which I just said a moment ago. The British option, British seemed to wanted Italy and Greece. Stalin was happy to recognize British-style politics of occupation because he thought that he could use the same principle, the politics of occupation, in securing Eastern Europe too. On his mind, it would be fair if we accept British dominance in the Southern Europe. In turn, Churchill might accept Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe. So that means division of Europe. Such a plan would be to divide Europe by great powers, just like Napoleon and Alexander I did in the early 19th century. But Stalin also knew the fact that such kind of British politics occupation was hated by FDR. So there is also another option, which is American vision. So FDR's vision is another option. So finally, we are going to talk about American vision. The United States, they had also key goals, wartime goals. The first one was end the first big war less costly. Of course, they are winning the war at that time against the Japanese Empire. But sacrifice they had to pay for in securing Pacific Island were tremendous and much more than they expected. They thought that it would be much harder in securing Japanese main island, not just Pacific Island. So they expected so many casualties in securing main island. And Japan has another army in Manchuria too at that time. So how about, how could you deal with the Kwangtung army, the great number, whose great number were stationed at Manchuria? So this is the real issue for United States. Around time the Yalta Conference took place. And second, the key goal was moral world under the United Nations, which is FDR's postwar vision called internationalism. This is the one that I talked about as as opposing to like the British style the politics of occupation. So what is FDR's internationalism? FDR's internationalism is non-territorial and opposed to unilateral control of any country and supports great powers' policing roles in maintaining order and peace in the world. Let me talk about a little bit more. In the vision of FDR's internationalism, each country should get independence, and world should be composed of those kind of state, independent state, with equal opportunities and free trade principle. For that, the world's great powers, like United States and Soviet Union, should jointly play a policing role in maintaining order under the institution like United Nations. If we apply to FDR plan to liberated country like Italy, Italy should become independent and should conduct free election where all political forces, if anti-fascism could participate in it. And that election should be overseen by United Nations Joint Commission. I think you already know this, the difference between the British style politics of occupation and FDR's vision. If we apply the FDR's internationalism to former colonies, they should go through like trusteeship by United Nations Joint Commission, and also every political forces there, if they are anti-imperialism, would have equal opportunities. Okay? So FDR's internationalism opposed to politics of occupation and spheres of influence by great powers, old imperial order. But United States also had obstacles. The British are sticking to old order, like politics of occupation. And Soviet, even higher obstacle represent, because United States needs Soviet help on East Asian front to end the Pacific War less costly. The Soviet Union at that time dominant military power in Europe. So it would be very hard for United States to deal with Soviet Union single-handedly. And Soviet Union actually played a critical role in defeating Nazis, which FDR personally cannot dismiss the point. And even more, the British and Soviet Union is getting closer for division of Europe and politics of occupation. Those are obstacles that United States had around the time the Yalta Conference was held. Okay, so let me get to how those kind of wartime goals and obstacles were settled at Yalta Conference on the spot. Let me give you a conclusion first of the conference. After the conference, the FDR's post-war plan was prevailed, because namely FDR's internationalism prevailed, and so did Stalin's wartime goals. Of course, there were some compromises. Churchill's only partially realized. So let me look at the American side first. America, the FDR made Stalin accept FDR's internationalism. So Soviet Union would participate in United Nations and FDR's moral world. And FDR guaranteed Soviet entry to East Asian War. against the Japanese Empire. These achievements that FDR had at the Yalta Conference. But to do that, FDR also had to make some compromises. What was that? He recognized Soviet dominance in Eastern Europe and possibly Northern China. Namely, FDR accepted the politics of occupation in Eastern Europe. That means FDR's internationalism prevails at the Yalta Conference, but at the same time, in case of Eastern Europe, he had no choice but accept politics of occupation. Okay? What about Soviet side? Soviet demilitarized Germany, and they had buffer zones. They secured buffer zones on their western front and acquired concession on northern China, which would be function as buffer zone 2 on their eastern front. But they also had to pay for the price, which was that they joined American-led United Nations and new moral world order. Finally, Britain. They maintained influence in Italy and Greece, which is the positive part of the Great Britain, but they have a lot of setbacks. The most key setback is they failed to get other two's guarantee of their old imperial interest, which were overwhelmed by FDR's internationalism at the conference. And they were excluded completely from Asian affairs too. So the Great Britain were no more imperial power after the Yalta Conference. So at Yalta, FDR's internationalism accepted, but only exception to that was the question of Europe, where politics of occupation was applied. Eastern Europe, I should say. Then why FDR allowed that exception? Because first, Soviet was the dominant military power on European continent, which means there was almost no way for FDR to make a Red Army to retreat to their own borderlines. Second, FDR personally appreciated Soviet war sacrifices and critical roles in defeating Nazis. And third, America needed help from Soviet Union in finishing East Asian War. And finally, FDR desperately needed Soviet participation in United Nations, without which he thought it is impossible to end the British-led imperialist order. So in this regard, Yalta allowed coexistence between FDR's post-war plan and principle of politics of occupation. Those are opposing concepts, but at Yalta, FDR had no choice but to allow those kind of opposing two concepts. Interestingly, FDR's internationalism was documented as official document, which was Declaration on Liberated Europe, but principle of occupation, which was also accepted at Yalta, was not documented. But the big three, the FDR, Stalin, and Churchill, were well aware of that exception, the concept of politics of occupation. This is the one that I just talked about, Declaration on Liberated Europe, to foster the condition in which the liberated peoples may exercise those rights all three governments, like United States, Great Britain, and Soviet Union, will jointly assist the people in any European liberated state or former Axis satellite state in Europe to form representative government, facilitate free elections, etc. This sounds like a perfect realization of FDR's internationalism, which was documented at the Yalta Conference. But during the conference, FDR also said like this: we want a Poland that will be thoroughly friendly to the Soviet for years to come. This is essential, which indicate FDR accepted politics occupation in Eastern Europe. Okay. Okay, in summer 1945, like 6 months passed after the Yalta. Only Stalin knew it. Knew the exception. I mean, knew the politics occupation was accepted at Yalta. As FDR passed away that April, 1945, and Churchill lost the election in that summer. On the very moment, I mean the summer of 1945, when only Stalin knew the meaning of politics occupation, Soviet and American troops entered Korean Peninsula. So finally we get to the Yalta impact on Korea. Okay. Actually, there was not much discussion at Yalta about Korean question. Not much discussion. It was not because Korea was not important at the time, but because Korea was no exception to Yalta. I mean, no exception to FDR's internationalism. According to FDR's internationalism, Korea should undergo trusteeship. Okay, right? Because FDR's internationalism prevailed outside Eastern Europe. So Korea was located outside Eastern Europe. So they should follow the rules of FDR's internationalism. So in that sense, Korea was not discussed a lot at Yalta because they followed the norm of the Yalta. The logical according to FDR's post-war plan. So the only thing they talk about at Yalta was duration. The FDR suggested like 20 or 30 years of trusteeship, I mean 신탁통치 in Korean, as opposed to, I mean in case of Philippines, FDR suggested 50 years, but Korea is like a little bit shorter years. But Stalin said shorter the better. He suggested like the even shorter years of trusteeship. But anyway, at Yalta, they all agree that Korea should go through the trusteeship. At this point, I like to emphasize one point. The trusteeship did not mean an extension of colonial law. Actually, many Koreans felt that way at that time. The 신탁통치 trusteeship is the extension of colonial law, and they still do. When you talk to the Korean right now, and what do you think about 신탁통치? Trusteeship? I think more than 90% would say like that. This means the extension of colonial law. But the trusteeship, as we said before, is not about the extension of colonial law. It's part of the FDR's internationalism. Trusteeship meant united Korea in the near future. Near is a relative term, but near future. Anyway, so in late August, the Soviet army entered northern Korea. And after they chased the Manchurian Japanese troops who were escaping to the peninsula. In early September, American army landed southern part of Korea from Japan, which they occupied earlier. Let's talk about Soviet side first. Soviet Union, Stalin, or the Soviet troops in the northern part of Korea, well aware of the agreement at Yalta. So, naturally they prepared for trusteeship. This is quite natural, sure. But American side, they get mixed and unclear message between loyal FDR followers at State Department and Truman and other military staffs. Truman and other military staffs who was not on the spot at Yalta. Because they are not at Yalta, they were not at Yalta, they didn't get a quite accurate understanding of Yalta agreement. Especially about the situation of Eastern European. So, U.S. troops in the southern part of Korea met unexpected vigorous left movement in southern part of Korea. They found reference in Soviet policy on Eastern Europe, where the politics of occupation was being applied at that time. Because Eastern Europe was accepted at the Yalta Conference as an exception for the politics of occupation. But the U.S. troops in the southern part of Korea were not aware of the fact that Eastern Europe was an exception at Yalta. So they beginning to think Eastern Europe as a model for their policy, not the exception. The politics of occupation. So what they did was repressed and marginalized political oppositions, just like the British did in Greece and Italy, including nationalists and socialists and communists, and helped their own people or their friendly people establish the power. That kind of people were firstly 한민당, Korea Democratic Party, later 승만리. So John Reed Hodge was commander, occupational force commander at southern part of Korea. And this one is 승만리. And he is Kim Song-soo, the central figure of 한민당 and the founder of 동아일보 and 고려대학교, Korea University. Now, Stalin began to look at Korean situation in a different way because of what was going on in southern part of Korea. Which means Stalin dropped the original idea about the trusteeship. They also started to think about different idea, which was politics of occupation. So they helped their people establish the power. Their own people, like Kim Il-sung, like Soviet followers. So that means two separate regimes in the peninsula. Okay, this is the completion of the division of Korean Peninsula. So I think there are the Yalta responsibility for the division of Korea. Yalta never intended division of Korean Peninsula. As you see, but allowed ambiguous coexistence between politics of occupation and trusteeship, namely FDR's internationalism. That ultimately led to the division of Korean Peninsula. Thank you.